Hello, I'm Michael Pierce, and this is the Human Condition Thanksgiving edition. Today, I'm going to tell you about how to survive Thanksgiving meals with relatives so that you don't die from overeating. I have a few strategies that I've used over the years for Thanksgiving and holidays when I eat with loved ones because I don't like to eat nothing and I don't like to be that guy in the corner that doesn't eat anything. You can certainly do that if you're sick, and I've certainly done it too. But there may be times when you want to eat something or that you find that after doing a long cleanse or after doing a elimination diet that you have a certain tolerance and you can handle a little bit of certain foods. And so you decide that you'd like to participate in social gatherings. I do that and I've done that. So what I do first is I decide that I'm not going to eat too much of anything. I tell myself that I'm not going to eat too much of anything, and if I do get a portion of foods, I'm going to get a very small portion. And so since the plates are so big and so full anyway, nobody really notices if you have a small portion of everything. That is very much easier to digest than large blob of something. I also tend to do best on meat. So the largest thing on my plate is going to be a meat type of serving. I'm going to make that be the largest part of my plate. I really do well with meat myself, and I tend to look for fatty meat. Wherever I can find it, I look for fatty meat over lean meat if I can. I'm extremely careful with gravies because gravies most always have cornstarch, which just tears me up. I don't know about you guys, but I really don't like cornstarch, and I don't do well with cornstarch, especially Western cornstarch. The difficulties that happen with us when we eat this kind of meal is we get headaches, we get bloating, we get migraines, we get sleep disturbances, we get the sore tummy, we get gas and bloating and changes in our stool, we get skin reactions and eczema and itching and rashes that form, we get sometimes hives or even difficulty breathing from allergic reactions or food reactions. We get carbo breath or carby breath, which is the breath that comes from eating too many carbs, kind of a stale breath that smells like an old basement. And that comes about from eating too many carbs. There's a lot of things that happen from eating all the different things that happen in Thanksgiving. One of the things that happens is reactive hypoglycemia. I don't know if you've ever hung out with people at Thanksgiving or other big holiday meals where there's a lot of eating, but when people eat a big heavy meal and they've eaten lots of protein, lots of fat, lots of carbs, everything, and then the meal's over, and within a few minutes after the meal, people start to go, I'd like some dessert. And they start craving sweets. They want candies, and they want pastries, and they want sweets, and they want donuts, and they want sweet drinks. That's reactive hypoglycemia. That's a person that has a metabolic problem where they can't burn the food that they've eaten, and so now they've eaten all this food, and they're actually a little bit of hypoglycemic after eating a ton of food. And that seems paradoxical, but it makes sense for those people that are either mineral deficient or insulin resistant or not fat adapted, even dehydrated sometimes. If you notice you or your family members get super hungry for sweets after a big meal, think about reactive hypoglycemia and think about getting more minerals, more water, insulin resistance program later of reduced carbohydrates to get that back, to increase your insulin sensitivity. There's another really common happening, which is called the food coma. After eating, you feel like you want to sleep, and that's usually insulin resistance. That's usually quite a bit of insulin resistance, and so that's high blood sugar. That's the opposite of reactive hypoglycemia or low blood sugar, and that's where a person wants to sleep because of their insulin resistance. And again, one of the greatest ways to help that is to do a little bit of exercise, to get a little bit more sodium, a little bit of salt. Sodium helps open the insulin receptors. We're not talking about a ton of sodium, but extra sodium helps, extra minerals help in general. The ability to move around and walk is very useful to allow sugar into the cells, and that's actually in the textbooks. It's in Guyton's textbook of medical physiology about how to help with insulin resistance in people that are having problems of creeping high blood sugars. Another strategy besides the small portions is to take digestive enzymes before a meal. Now, I like to take digestive enzymes that are proteases that digest protein, lipases that digest fat. Those kinds of enzymes will help you digest your food. It's also useful to know that if you chew your food longer and if you cut your food smaller and you eat slower and chew more, you'll notice that you digest better and it's a lot easier. So that's a very useful types of thing. There's also amylase. You can take the amylase enzyme, which is an enzyme to digest carbohydrates. These are often in bromelain and papaya enzymes and pineapple enzymes. These are available over the counter as chewables or as pills you can take. Most people take them before a meal so they start dissolving in your stomach and get ready for a meal. However, they also work after a meal if you find yourself after a meal feeling really bogged down and can't digest, you can throw down a few digestive enzymes after a meal too. It's a little slower and it's a little less effective, but it does work and it does make people feel a lot better. I also like to help increase stomach acid. So I might take a zinc lozenge before a meal to help goose my stomach acid from my parietal cells in my stomach, because there's an enzyme in there called carbonic anhydrase that helps you make hydrochloric acid from your blood. So those cells in your stomach have blood passing by and they grab hydrogen, they grab chloride, they put them together and they release them into the stomach as hydrochloric acid. And that's how we make our stomach acid. So if you've got a zinc supplement, sometimes a zinc lozenge that you might dissolve in your mouth could do very, very well for you. Likewise, lemon juice, a bit of lemon juice squirted on some food, or lemon juice squirted into some water and drunk, or some raw apple cider vinegar sprinkled onto some salad or some food or into a drink can be very useful. It goes great in many dishes. If you're eating different foods and meats, raw apple cider vinegar does great for taste, and it brightens up the taste of the food and can also help you digest your food by adding to stomach acid. I tend to use L-carnitine to burn fat. I tend to take about 1,000 milligrams in the morning and 1,000 milligrams at night if I'm in a situation where I really want to do some food and I feel like not digesting my fat. I want to digest my fat better and more efficiently. So L-carnitine would be something that's very useful that way. There's a whole class of binders that are useful at Thanksgiving. My favorite binder is just activated charcoal in pill form or powder. You just take that orally and that can help bind to things that are agreeing with your stomach. I do that sometimes. I like glucosamine sulfate. Glucosamine sulfate can be bought inexpensively at some of the larger stores. It is a shellfish source though, so be careful if you've got a shellfish allergy. Some people don't react so well to that. I do well with it. It's my favorite binder of dairy and gluten proteins. There is also kelp. Some people will use kelp pills. Kelp pills can be a nice binder that binds to foods and lectins and things that aren't so agreeable to the intestine. And there's a number of people that use different clays. I don't love clay products because large amounts of clay products, when they bind and they do their job and bind to different foods, they form a cement in your stomach, and so they need to be washed out. Hippocrates talked about this in his books 500 years before Christ. He mentioned that when you use clay in a person orally, it forms a cement and you have to use hydrotherapy or enemas to wash them out. And that's not fun for a lot of people. So some people will use a very low dose clay in liquid form, and that's not as effective, of course, but it is less formation of cement. So I tend to shy away from clay formulas, but you can use them. There's also diatomaceous earth, food grade diatomaceous earth, somewhat similar to what they use in the garden, but not the same thing because it's food grade. Diatomaceous earth is used in some cases for people to detoxify and deal with pest control and worms in their body and try to get rid of things that are infecting them, but it's also used as a cleanse and as a binder to help carry things out of the body like aluminum. Another thing that I like a lot is dried cloves. Many times you'll find in your kitchen there's a jar of dried sharp cloves, and I like to take that sharp dried clove flower and put it in my mouth and suck on it, and that's a very good way of reducing gas and bloating, and it helps soothe the stomach and helps soothe digestion. Peppermint tea is always nice after a big heavy meal to settle the stomach. And I will end with telling you my big three for the gallbladder. When you've eaten too much fat, I like to use kind of a big three for the gallbladder, which is some kind of ox bile or bile salts, an L-taurine supplement of at least 500 milligrams, L-taurine, T-A-U-R-I-N-E, and lecithin from non-GMO soy or non-GMO sunflower, which is lecithin. Lecithin is like a soap emulsifier. It breaks up oil like soap, and it's very useful to take, and it's about 95% of what is in your bile anyway. Now, you get lecithin from animal products, but you can get lecithin very quickly from these plant products, so it's a very easy way to do it. And that is my quick tips for surviving Thanksgiving meals.